We're live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, coming up in the next 30 minutes. Voters in 15 US states and one territory cast their ballots on Super Tuesday, the biggest voting day of the primary season. US says Gaza ceasefire deal in exchange for the release of Israeli hostages in Hamas hands. Talks on ending Israel-Lebanon border fighting to begin in Ramadan. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar on an official visit to South Korea to attend 10th India-South Korea Joint Commission meeting on Wednesday. In tennis, Romania's former world number one Simona Halep wins doping appeal. Court of Arbitration reduces 4-year doping ban to 9 months. On the top story now, former President Donald Trump won Virginia's Republican presidential nominating contest on Tuesday by defeating former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. Polls have closed in Vermont and Virginia as ballot counting begins on key U.S. Election Day, Super Tuesday. Millions of Americans across 15 states and one territory are making their choice for who the major parties should nominate as presidential candidate. The election in November is already almost certain to be a rematch between Trump and President Joe Biden. On the other hand, U.S. President Joe Biden easily won in Iowa and Virginia, according to the projections, and told reporters that he had won his last 5 polls ahead of the November presidential election.
My poll numbers, the last 5 polls you guys don't report, I'm winning 5 in a row. You guys only look at the New York Times. They're a great paper.
Well, the National Electoral Commission of Venezuela announced that the presidential elections will be held on the 28th of July. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro celebrated the announcement of the date and expressed his enthusiasm for the presidential elections, but did not confirm whether he would seek a third term. Maduro's re-election to a 6-year term during the last presidential vote in 2018 has been criticized by the opposition, the United States, and others as fraudulent. Meanwhile, the head of the National Electoral Council said that uncertainty remains over who will be the opposition coalition's candidate, with President Nicolas Maduro expected to seek another term. And as delegations held the 3rd day of talks with no signs of a breakthrough in ceasefire between Hamas and mediators in Cairo on Tuesday, U.S. President Joe Biden said it was in the hands of Hamas now whether to accept a deal for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip in exchange for the release of Israeli hostages. Negotiators are in Cairo trying to secure a 40-day ceasefire. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and Qatari Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani discussed a potential ceasefire in exchange for the release of hostages held in Gaza on Tuesday. Sullivan and Al Thani stressed that the deal will focus on release of sick, wounded, elderly and women hostages and agreed to stay in regular contact.
Hamas right now. The Israelis have been cooperating. There's an offer out there that's rational. We don't know what. We'll know in a couple days if it's going to happen. But we need the ceasefire. Well, there's got to be a ceasefire because Ramadan, if we get into a circumstance where this continues through Ramadan, Israel and Jerusalem, again, it could be very, very dangerous. So we're trying hard for that ceasefire.
Meanwhile, Lebanon's caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati said indirect talks between Lebanon and Israel will begin during the holy month of Ramadan, which starts next week.
The intel says there will be ceasefire in Gaza before Ramadan. On our matters, there will be negotiations during the month of Ramadan. There will be contact with Hochstein within the next 48 hours, either from President Berry or myself, to see where we are currently standing on this issue.
And the United States military released a video showing humanitarian aid airdrop into Gaza. The aid included 60 bundles of food supplies. The United States said that the operation was carried out in collaboration with Jordan. This comes as Israeli War Cabinet member Benny Gantz visited top U.S. officials in Washington on Wednesday. Gantz met with Vice President Kamala Harris, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, and U.S. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. In a meeting with Blinken, Gantz discussed delivery of aid and efforts to reach a ceasefire in Gaza between Israel and Hamas. And U.S. forces shot down one anti-ship ballistic missile and 3 drones launched from Houthi-controlled areas of Yemen toward the U.S. cannon in the Red Sea on Tuesday. This attack came as Houthis carried out targeting 2 U.S. warship destroyers in the Red Sea.
The naval forces, missile forces and air forces of the Yemeni armed forces, with the help of Allah Almighty, carried out a qualitative military operation in which they targeted 2 American warship destroyers in the Red Sea. The operation was carried out with a number of naval missiles and drones. The Yemeni armed forces will not hesitate to expand their operations against all hostile targets.
And on to another conflict. Ukraine's military intelligence agency said on Tuesday that its sea drones hit and destroyed a Russian Black Sea Fleet patrol ship off the occupied Crimean Peninsula. The patrol ship is one of a series of Russian vessels that have been destroyed in recent months as Kyiv steps up its attack against Russian targets deep behind the war's front lines. Megumi Lim has more from Kyiv.
A Russian Black Sea Fleet patrol ship, Sergei Kotov, was hit during an overnight drone attack on Tuesday, according to Ukraine's military intelligence agency. The agency said the ship was located near the Kerch Strait, off occupied Crimea. The attack was reportedly carried out by a special unit of the intelligence agency called Group 13, using domestically produced Magura V5 naval drones. Train traffic on the Kerch Bridge linking Russia to Crimea was temporarily stopped overnight after explosions were reported in the area. The military intelligence agency said the patrol ship, which costs about $65 million, suffered damages to its stern on its left and right sides. Some Russian military bloggers confirmed the claim, saying there were attempts to tow the damaged ship to port, which ultimately sank. According to the agency's preliminary findings, 7 Russian sailors were killed and 6 injured as a result of the attack. A Ukrainian media outlet, Ukrainska Pravda, citing unnamed sources, reported that a Russian transport and combat helicopter was also destroyed along with the vessel. And Ukraine's military intelligence spokesman Andriy Yusov said Russian forces had planned to deploy anti-aircraft missile systems to the patrol ship. Now, Sergei Kotov is one of a series of Russian vessels that have been hit in recent months. On February 14th, the Russian landing ship Caesar Kunikov was sunk in the Black Sea after it was hit by Ukrainian naval drones. Megumi Lim in Kyiv reporting for DD India.
Well, Haiti is facing one of its worst security crises in recent years. Gangs have taken control of the capital Port-au-Prince, while residents are fleeing the capital due to the growing violence. DD's Latin American correspondent Maritrini Mena has more detail.
The state of emergency declared on Sunday in Haiti has not prevented an increase in violence. Armed gangs have attacked strategic locations such as the country's central bank and the airport. It's been reported that 80% of the capital Port-au-Prince is controlled by heavily armed civilians. The city is almost empty, with residents avoiding the streets. Last Saturday, gang members helped about 4,000 inmates escape from 2 jails, some of them accused of serious crimes, such as murders and kidnappings. Haiti has faced several years of turmoil, and it has worsened since the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse in 2021. Since then, the Prime Minister, Ariel Henry, has been ruling the country, but he's widely unpopular. This surge in violence comes as the Prime Minister traveled to Kenya to bring a UN-backed mission to strengthen Haiti's police forces. The PM has attempted to return to his country from the United States, but flights have been canceled to and from Haiti, and there's no clear indication on when he'll return. He's not publicly commented on the violence. The UN has estimated that about 15,000 people had fled their homes, driven by the surging violence. The UN chief, Antonio Guterres, has called for an urgent action to end rampant insecurity. Haiti is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere and one of the poorest in the world. In Caracas, Maritrini Mena, reporting for DD India.
Meanwhile, Haiti's Prime Minister Ariel Henry landed in Puerto Rico on Tuesday amid escalating gang violence that has threatened to topple his government and left thousands homeless. Puerto Rico's governor's office confirmed Henry had landed in capital San Juan. It was unclear why Henry did not fly directly to Haiti, though heavy gunfire was heard near the capital's international airport on Monday. Haiti's already fragile security situation worsened over the weekend while Henry was in Kenya to tie up a deal for the deployment of foreign troops to restore order. And China has toughened its stance on Taiwan, dropping the mention of peaceful reunification from Premier Li Qiang's government work report at the National People's Congress. The work report also mentions about China's long-term plan to support prosperity and stability in Hong Kong and Macau and resolutely opposes Taiwan independence, separatist activities and external interference on Taiwan. China plans to raise its defense spending by 7.2% to $30 billion this year, marking a continued surge in military budget growth during Xi Jinping's tenure. Chinese premier in his address said that China is intending to bolster its military over the next decade and aiming to be prepared to win a war.
We will adhere to implementation of the Chinese Communist Party's overall policy for the new era on resolving the Taiwan question, stay committed to the One China principle and the 1992 consensus, and resolutely oppose separatist activities aimed at Taiwan independence and external interference. We will promote peaceful development of cross-strait relations and be firm in advancing the cause of China's reunification. By deepening integrated cross-strait development, we will improve the well-being of the compatriots on both sides of Taiwan Strait so that, together, we can realize the glorious cause of national rejuvenation.
Meanwhile, tensions have escalated between China and Philippines after the Philippines alleged that China's Coast Guard engaged in risky maneuvers, resulting in a collision between a Philippine Coast Guard ship and a Chinese vessel during a resupply mission for Philippine troops in the South China Sea. China's Coast Guard responded to the allegations, saying it took professional and restrained, reasonable and lawful actions against Philippine vessels that unlawfully entered waters near the Second Thomas Shoal, a contested atoll in the South China Sea. And now let's take a look at other stories making news around the globe. Nicolas Ghesquière celebrated his 10th anniversary at Louis Vuitton with fashion show with a fashion that drew crowds to the Louvre Museum at nightfall in the last day of Paris Fashion Week. The fall collection resembled a 19th century French covered market in iron and glass with blinking tubes in the center. Over 100 Lego sculptures made with millions of bricks are being showcased at the Art of the Brick exhibition in London. Artist Nathan Sawaya spent nearly 20 years of his life gluing together tiny bricks to create reimagined versions of some of the world's most famous art pieces. Visitors to find original creations of dinosaur skeleton and torso in the exhibit there. David Beckham attends premiere of Guy Ritchie's new TV show, The Gentleman in London. The former England footballer posed for photos with Ravenstone and shared a hug with Jason Statham at the premiere of the TV series. The Gentleman is due to hit streaming platform Netflix from 7th of March. Heavy rain turned a local street in Wisconsin into a river. Flooding is one of the most common natural disasters in Wisconsin. The region has experienced a significant flood at least once every decade since 1880. The wet conditions are expected to last until the weekend. And still to come on this edition of DD India Live. Prime Minister Modi to launch projects worth several crores, also to inaugurate Kolkata and Agra metro projects today. Ahead of the next general election, the British government to announce further tax cuts as part of the UK's spring budget.
We just don't bring you the news as it unfolds. We get to the heart of the matter.
We don't just present facts, we demystify complex social, political and economic events.
We break stories that shape the world's present and future because you deserve the truth.
I am Tanvi Taneja from New Delhi.
I'm Ollie Barrett from London.
I'm Nick Harper from Washington, D.C.
Join us on DD India Global Monday to Friday at these times.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Lipakshi Khuran, and moving on, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi will visit West Bengal and Bihar today. Prime Minister Modi will inaugurate and lay the foundation stones for various connectivity projects in West Bengal's Kolkata on Wednesday with a total value of 15,400 crore rupees. Prime Minister Modi will inaugurate India's first under-river metro tunnel in Kolkata. Later in the day, he will also unveil, dedicate and lay the foundation stones for multiple development initiatives worth approximately 12,800 crore rupees in Bihar's Bethiya. And India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar is in Seoul on the first leg of his 4-day visit to South Korea and Japan. Jaishankar will attend 10th India-South Korea Joint Commission meeting on Wednesday. Jaishankar said India-Korea partnership a significant factor in the Indo-Pacific and beyond. Saknik Chakravarti tells us more.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar on an official visit to South Korea spoke at the Korea National Diplomatic Academy on broadening horizons, India-Korea partnership in the Indo-Pacific. Dr. Jaishankar highlighted that India-Korea partnership is significant, but even more so when we consider its impact on the Indo-Pacific.
India's stakes in terms of trade, investments, services, resources, logistics and technology in the Indo-Pacific are growing by the day. Ensuring the stability, safety and security of this region is therefore vital for us. India-ROK partnership is significant, but even more so when we look at its impact on the Indo-Pacific.
Dr. Jaishankar also addressed the Indian community in Seoul and spoke of India-Korea relations.
Today, the partnership between India and Korea can be a very different partnership. A partnership which will be much more useful, much more important, and of a much higher level for both countries. When we speak today about telecommunications or semiconductors or renewables or electric mobility or green technology, there are really today big capabilities being built in India. Those capabilities today actually give us the ability to forge partnerships.
Earlier in the day, Dr. S. Jaishankar held a meeting with Prime Minister of South Korea, Han Duck-soo, in Seoul. Dr. Jaishankar appreciated South Korean Prime Minister's positive sentiments for the ties between the two countries. He also met South Korea's Trade, Industry and Energy Minister, An Dak-jian, in Seoul. The two leaders held wide-ranging conversation on trade and economic cooperation. Dr. S. Jaishankar held discussions with think tank representatives of the Republic of Korea, highlighting increased exchanges as convergences between the two countries continue to grow. With Bureau Inputs, Shagnik Chakraborty reporting for DD India.
And Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh embarked at sea on Tuesday to witness the Indian Navy's ability to conduct twin carrier operations. The demonstration was held as part of the first edition of Naval Commanders Conference, which is being held in hybrid form. During the inaugural session, both the aircraft carriers showcased their ability to safeguard India's maritime interest. Well, the cargo seized in January this year from a Pakistan-bound ship can be used for military purposes as per a DRDO report. On January 23rd, India's security agencies had seized a Karachi-bound ship from China over a suspected consignment for Pakistan's nuclear weapons program at Navi Mumbai's Nahawa Sheva port. Now, the DRDO has also submitted a report to authorities over the matter. According to the report by DRDO experts, the seized large-size computer numerical control machines are dual-use equipment and can be used for military applications. And in Pakistan, at least 35 people have been killed and dozens injured during the last 5 days as heavy rains and snowfall cripples parts of the country. Floods from record-breaking monsoon rains in Pakistan and glacial melt in the country's mountainous north affected over 33 million people, killing over 1,700 of its people. The havoc caused disrupting of homes, roads, railways, bridges, livestock and crops, with damage estimated of about $30 billion in 2022. And now let's take a look at other stories making news today. A team of Election Commission of India officials led by Deputy Election Commissioner Hirdesh Kumar held a series of meetings to review the poll preparedness ahead of the general elections in India. The ECI team met with the Chief Secretary to the Government of Assam and representatives of various central enforcement agencies in a series of meetings held at Janata Bhavan in Dispur of India's Assam. India's Anti-Money Laundering Agency Enforcement Directorate has provisionally attached movable and immovable assets worth around 130 million rupees in the ongoing investigations against former TMC leader Shah Jahan Sheikh and others. ED initiated investigation on the basis of multiple FRIs registered by the police under various sections of Indian Penal Code Act and Arms Act against the former TMC leader. Technology conglomerate Google has agreed to restore all the recently delisted Indian apps from its platform Play Store. India's IT minister informs the media after having a meeting with representatives from Google and the affected app developers over the issue. Google had recently delisted over 100 apps by prominent Indian tech companies over non-compliance issues. A massive fire broke out in a plastic factory at Daman in the Indian Union territory of Daman and Diu on Tuesday night. Thick plumes of fume billowed from the massive fire in the factory. Upon receiving the information, 6 to 7 fire tenders rushed to the spot and controlled the fire. No injury to life has been reported yet. Further investigation is underway. Moving on, the British government is poised to announce further tax cuts on Wednesday as part of the UK's spring budget. It's one option for a Conservative government looking to boost its popularity ahead of the next general election. But many economic institutions say they've already gone too far slashing taxes. Stuart Smith reports for more from London.
Chancellor of the Exchequer made $25 billion of tax cuts for working people and businesses, which he hailed as a great way to reduce the cost of living and boost growth.
An autumn statement for a country that has turned a corner, an autumn statement for growth, which I commend to the House.
But it sparked a warning from the International Monetary Fund. The UN body said cutting taxes, while the UK already wrestles with underfunded services, was not a good idea. Other economists made similar warnings.
I think you can see why the UK government will be under pressure to cut taxes. It's increased them a lot since 2019. It looks like a record-breaking parliament in terms of tax rises, and it's pushing the tax burden in the UK up to levels we've not seen here before. So tax cuts would be nice to have, and they certainly can help boost growth. The problem is that tax cuts generally involve you getting less revenue, even if they do boost growth, and therefore they will require spending cuts to pay for them.
The IMF warns that lost revenue would be better retained and spent on some of the UK's most cash-strapped institutions, like hospitals and schools. It also suggests that money could be put to good use investing in ailing infrastructure and the climate transition. But bearing the brunt of cuts over the last decade has been local councils, half of whom said last week they're on track to go bankrupt within 5 years without serious funding reform. A third say they'll cut funding to parks and leisure. Another third say they'll have to cut spending on arts and culture. What the Chancellor announces on Wednesday, though, may be moot. The government might only have months left in power.
The history of UK elections shows us that we certainly shouldn't be surprised if the first 12 months after election sees pretty big tax rises, and quite often tax rises that we didn't hear about in the winning party's manifesto.
But the opposition Labour Party has largely kept its options open for now as to how it would budget the economy, though it may have to avoid traps left by the outgoing government. Its campaign so far promises more investment and better funded public services, like the IMF recommends. But the question of specifically which taxes will pay for that isn't yet public. Stuart Smith in London, reporting for DD India.
And NATO launched an exercise to defend its newly expanded Nordic territory, with more than 20,000 of soldiers from over 30 nations taking part in drills lasting nearly 2 weeks in the northern regions of Finland and Sweden. The purpose of the exercise is to strengthen the defence in the High North and reinforce troops in order to be capable of carrying out a defensive joint operation in Arctic conditions. About 90,000 troops are due to join the wider NATO exercises running through May. And on to sports update now. Former Wimbledon and French Open champion Simona Halep on Tuesday won doping appeal after the top court for global support, the Court of Arbitration for Sport, cut short her 4-year doping ban to 9 months, a ruling that represents a major victory for the Romanian former world number 1. Halep has been provisionally suspended since October 2022 after testing positive for roxadustat, a banned drug that stimulates the production of red blood cells, at the US Open that year. An independent tribunal accepted Halep's argument that she had taken contaminated supplements, but said the volume she ingested could not have resulted in the concentration of roxadustat found in a positive sample. And in soccer, German club Bayern Munich on Tuesday marched into the quarter-final of the UEFA Champions League after top scorer Harry Kane stuck once in either half to steer the Germans to a 3-0 win over Lazio with a 3-1 aggregate victory, reigniting title hopes among their fans. Kane headed in for the lead in the 38th minute to cancel out the Lazio's first leg 1-0 advantage, and then tapped in their third goal on the rebound in the 66th after Thomas Müller's first half stoppage time effort had made it 2-0. The win provides instant relief for coach Thomas Tuchel and his team that had won just one of their last 5 matches in all competitions prior to Tuesday and are currently 10 points off the top in the Bundesliga. And glamorous boats were docked along Dubai's harbour, attracting the region's wealthiest, who were eager to explore the latest yacht technology and designs during the 30th edition of the Dubai International Boat Show. With more than 200 boats on display at the exhibition, including 2 fully electric yachts, Deputy Managing Director of Gulfcraft, Abir Al-Shali, described this year's show as incredibly successful. Well, that's all for this edition of DD India Live. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Lipakshi Khurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.